Drain work in DeKalb County caused a 20-acre wetland to dry up, killing thousands of fish. News Channel 15's Holly Campbell went to the area today and joins us now in Studio 15.
Crews in DeKalb County were working on drain tiles that date back to the 1800s when wetlands nearby were drained. It happened in Corona off of US 6. Matt Smith says part of the wetland belongs to his brother. Both are upset because of the damage to the property and all the fish that were killed. Smith says crews started working on the drains about 2 weeks ago. County officials told us today the bank of the wetland washed out during work, while Smith says it was dug out by crews, drying up the pond.
They drained all this wetland, and they've killed a lot of fish. A lot of fish have went down the stream or down the drain and are now headed on their way. You got dead fish, you got pollutants from decaying fish.
Officials from DeKalb County's Drainage Board weren't available for an on-camera interview today, but told me a device that will regulate the water will be installed next week. After that is in place, the wetland will fill back in with water. Smith says his family will likely seek compensation for the fish that were killed and the devastation to the property. In Studio 15, Holly Campbell, News Channel 15.
They're hurting big time as well.
It's been a tough year for New England farmers like Bill Clark. The land he owns and farms in Danvers, Massachusetts, the Clark family has owned since 1728. That's 48 years before our country was a country.
And this is what used to be called Salem Village, one of the oldest agricultural areas in the country.
So with that history as a guide, Bill intimately knows the land off which he makes a living.
I hate to see these things thrown away, you know?
And he knows the weather history there, too.
I haven't dealt with a drought like this since my father ran the farm back in the 1960s. And we had a 5-year period back then when it was pretty dry. And at that time, he really encouraged me to be aware of how severe the water problems could be, and we've really suffered it this year.
Learning from his father, Bill disconnected from the local water supply and has solely relied on several wells for the last 5 years. But don't think those wells brought a flood of help this year. It hasn't rained since early June at Clark Farm.
Lettuce basically got devastated. I had 3 or 4 really good fields of lettuce early in the spring, and then starting around early July, they started to dry up really fast.
Bill tells me, though some of these plants look healthy, many of them are not. They're malnourished. They're not getting the water and nutrients they need, and many of them are unharvestable. And probably the easiest way to see this farm is having a problem is by looking at this incredibly dry dirt. One thing Bill reminds us about farming, typically loans help a farmer start each year's crop. And when they harvest, it's their annual payday. So when they have a serious drought, many can't pay back those loans and payday begins to diminish.
A lot of my friends are in really deep trouble. One of them defaulted on a major loan that he had to Farm Credit, and he's worried about his farm, losing his farm. This extreme dry weather is something that we've been worried about with global warming and stuff like that, and it's going to be one of the effects of even a few degrees warmer in the temperature and climate.
In Danvers, Massachusetts.
Heavy rain swept through the mid-Atlantic on Thursday, causing major flooding in several states from North Carolina to Delaware. In Shenandoah County, Virginia, one man was killed by a falling tree where rain totaled about 8 inches and winds were gusting around 30 miles per hour at the time of the incident. In North Carolina, a road was completely impassable in Rayford, where rain totaled up to a foot, and that fell in just one day. And the Little River near Fort Bragg Army Base broke a 70-year flood record and is threatening to burst a dam. Schools were closed in Cumberland, Fort Bragg, and Hoke counties. And in Maryland, nearly 200 people were evacuated from a condo complex in Salisbury as water rushed through the Morris Mill Dam.
Hurricane Matthew has turned deadly off Colombia's Caribbean coast, killing at least one person as it heads north. Houses have been damaged, and some of them have been submerged in ocean surges. With winds peaking at 160 miles per hour, Matthew is now at the highest level, 5, meaning it's the most powerful hurricane in the Atlantic since Felix in 2007. By Sunday, it will be nearing Jamaica, and then on Monday, Cuba and Haiti. It will hit hardest there, as most people live in flimsy shacks with corrugated iron roofs that have little chance against high winds. Worse, thousands still live in tents after a vicious earthquake in 2010. They've announced a hurricane. We're keeping watch. We can't do anything, one slum dweller in the capital, Port-au-Prince, said. We could have repaired our homes, but we don't have money. We can't do anything but watch. Food and other aid is being stocked up by the authorities as Haitians pray that they'll be spared another deadly disaster.
It's known as the volcano of fire, and with western Mexico's Colima volcano roaring into life, it's time for those who live in its shadow to pack up and get out. Civil protection teams have been encouraging hundreds of local villagers to evacuate since Colima began spewing ash and thick black smoke into the sky on Friday. They're being housed in a nearby shelter until it's safe to return home.
An emergency order just signed to keep a deadly new drug off the streets of Southwest Florida.
The street name is called Pinky. It has killed more than 50 people around the country, including here in Florida.
NBC2's Nestor Mato has the warning from state officials.
Well, it's cheap and it's easily available on the streets or even online. It's also 50 times more powerful than heroin, and it could kill you.
We are going to save lives.
State Attorney Pam Bondi signing an emergency ban today outlawing new 47-700 in Florida. She says the new designer drug has already killed 50 across the country, 9 deaths reported right here in Florida.
Importing this, if you're manufacturing this, if you're mixing it with other things, we are coming after you.
Veronica Bustamante is a mother to young boys in Naples. She says she was terrified to find that you don't even need a drug dealer. Anyone with a cell phone can buy the dangerous drug for $40 a gram online.
Having these drugs available, scary.
One time could be the last time.
Nancy Dauphiné of the David Lawrence Center in Collier County says her facility is treating a lot more synthetic drug abusers. Orange County's medical examiner says the synthetic opioid is 8 times more powerful than morphine and 50 times more powerful than heroin.
These are deadly substances, and it can be like Russian roulette.
Experts say the drug was created by researchers in the 1970s as a morphine substitute, and it could cause breathing to slow down or completely stop. Now dealers from out of the country are reusing the chemical recipe and selling it in the States. Bondi says the drug has no medical use, so she wants it banned before someone else falls victim.
I feel, safer that we are controlling it and it's not available for kids or anybody.
The drug comes in pill, powder, and nasal form, and it's actually believed to have been in singer Prince at the time that he died. Bondi says anyone caught with the drug could face a third degree felony and 5 years in prison.
Thousands of Ethiopians had gathered for an annual religious festival in a town about 40 kilometers south of the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Mingling in the crowd were anti-government protesters. Their chants of "We need justice" stopped community elders from giving their speeches. Police fired tear gas and guns into the air. The crowds fled and created a stampede. In the chaos, some people fell into a ditch. The government says people have been killed.
It looks like it's quite difficult for the government security personnel to handle the situation. There was over 1 million people there. It looks like it's out of their control. They couldn't handle the thing. This much people there.
The rally was in the Oromia region, where there have been occasional protests over the past 2 years. They began after a land dispute and have since turned into anti-government demonstrations. Opposition parties failed to win a single seat in parliamentary elections last year. They accused the government of rigging the vote. Government leaders dismissed the allegations and say rebel groups are provoking violence.
They called it the Global Day of Rage for Aleppo. In cities across the world, like here in Berlin, demonstrators gathered to denounce the all-out Russian and Syrian bombing campaign of residential areas that's left hundreds of people dead. In Turkey, too, protesters took to the streets in solidarity with civilians under fire. The message and emotion in Istanbul was echoed on the streets of London. Fears are growing of an even greater bloodbath with a full-on ground offensive in Aleppo looming. The Syrian army is also being helped by Iranian-backed militias. Addressing the international community, he says, when you see Bashar Assad and the Russians and the Iranians committing crimes against humanity in Syria, violating international law, and you're doing nothing to stop it, then you're part of it. Syria's multi-sided civil war has killed hundreds of thousands of people, made half the population homeless, and allowed much of the east of the country to fall into the hands of ISIL.
Al Jazeera's team in Aleppo was on the scene when an airstrike hit a residential area. Amr al-Halabi reports.
There's now shelling with phosphorus bombs on a number of neighbourhoods in Aleppo city. People are absolutely terrified. Okay, keep filming, keep filming. Slow down, slow down. Let's go. Okay, film. A number of homes have been set on fire after they were targeted with phosphorus bombs. A number of neighbourhoods and homes are affected. Okay, follow me. A hospital is nearby. Where's the hospital? Okay, keep filming.
الدفاع المدني الآن يحاولون إطفاء الحرائق في هذا. سكر باب الباب. لا امشي شوي.
The defence forces are trying to put out the fires. Okay, drive slowly here. We have to evacuate the place because warplanes usually come back and target the same areas they targeted before. A number of warplanes are now roaming the skies and shelling Aleppo with phosphorus and cluster bombs.
Well, as James just said, it was 1 year ago today that Russia began its airstrikes in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And in that time, more than 12,000 refugees from Syria have come here to the U.S. Tonight, national correspondent William Lajeunesse examines what happens to some of them after they arrive.
This is what they left. This is where they landed. A life of heartache replaced by one of hope.
Here is very comfortable and chance for me and another people.
The Bilal family arrived in the U.S. 3 months ago after fleeing war-torn Syria.
The situation in Syria is very bad. Here I find peace for me and my family.
Like others, the journey wasn't easy, including 3 years in Jordan for a background check. Now, thanks to the State Department, U.S. taxpayers, and their caseworker,
the family, everybody's okay.
Life in California is looking up. This is Ibrahim Hussein. It is his job to make sure these immigrants and these refugees do not fall through the cracks, financially or culturally. So he spends a lot of time in the car, going to the bank, to the school, apartment, to make sure these people get off on the right foot.
When they come here, they're so much grateful. They want to help themselves and help their children.
To start their new lives, each refugee receives $1,200 from Washington. They also qualify for food stamps, Medicaid, and welfare. And while some 40% of refugees receive benefits for 5 years or more, Samir hopes they won't need it.
Dad, now training for a gas station. Training.
Learn the gas station in the cashier. According to the State Department, of some 12,000 Syrian refugees this year, California took in the most, followed by Michigan and Texas, which along with 31 other states is trying to bar their entry.
I am lucky coming there, but maybe 10 million in Syria, it's damaged life.
I tell them this is the greatest place on earth.
A refugee himself from Somalia, Hussein understands acceptance can take time, but he says refugees like the Bilals just want a chance to prove they too can be Americans.
I know a lot of people are afraid of me because I'm Muslim and from Syria, but I hope once they get to know me, that will change.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Warsaw to protest against a potential total ban on abortion in Poland. Under the current law, abortions are only allowed in cases of rape, incest, or if a woman or fetus's life is in danger. And a new bill is being considered to restrict it further.
Speaking at the demo, a member of the Democratic Left Party explained how a petition to liberalise laws was rejected by Parliament, while a proposal which could result in jail time for women terminating pregnancies is being considered. Last week, Polish MPs voted to push a citizen-led petition for a total abortion ban for further review. Another pro-choice protest is scheduled for Monday, when women are being called upon to go on strike in the hope that their collective absence from work will send a signal that is difficult to ignore.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard has built a new attack drone, copied from a US unmanned aerial vehicle captured 5 years ago, Iranian media have reported. The semi-official Tasnim news agency claims the Thunderbolt drone is similar to the RQ-170 Sentinel spy drone. According to the Revolutionary Guard, it's a long-range drone capable of carrying 4 smart bombs.